Hey, it's Tim here. We're going to be replacing the driver's side, or excuse me, the passenger side, ball joint and upper control arm today. And I got the car already jacked up here. What I did is put a jack stand underneath the back where I had it jacked up on the frame here. I'm going to move my hydraulic jack up here so I can pull the suspension up and down when I want. So pretty much the ball joint's crap at this point. Want to get it out of there, and we'll go from there. Alright, so on this particular one, the ABS sensor, I have ABS on my front F150. Going to take off the ABS, just kind of make sure you get that tucked out of the way. You could detach it up here if you wanted, but we'll leave it alright. Up in the back here, there's going to be two spots, so you're going to use I have a deep well, 13/16. I'm sure it's actually metric, but I'm not certain, but it works if it's just right. That one here, we're going to break it off, and then we got another bolt on this side that we're going to take off. And then underneath the ball joint, I'll show you a little bit more what's going on with that later. But you see, I'm going to get to work here on breaking those bolts in the back. I got a big breaker bar, and I just have another standard guy here. All right, let's get these plugged in. Got that side done. Alright, I always like to have a place to stick these guys, so I'm just use like my little right here, pop them in. Go ahead and leave the bolt still in there. We'll play with that in a little bit later. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. We'll just break it off and go from there. Okay. I'm behind the ball joint right now. Down in here you can see the support arm for the sway bar. Up in here there is a cotter pin that I'm going to have to straighten out. This is beneath the ball joint right here. Straighten out. We're going to get that cotter pin all the way taken out. So I'm using a pair of needle nose pliers just to straighten out the cotter pin. Alright. Alright, I actually moved to the other side with the camera here. And while I'm working the camera, trying to see what I'm doing here with the cotter pin. Got it all pretty much straightened out. Right up in here. If I need to, I will snap those off, but I'm trying to reuse them. See if I can pull through. Alright, I got the cotter pin out now, right here. You know, those pliers got to push it out. And then right up underneath here, you'll see the bolt. You just got to be careful of the brake line here. I actually had to switch my socket here to a 7/8 socket in order to get onto this bolt here. Like I said, you gotta watch out for the brake line, but that little guy's gonna come out and free up the ball joint here. We'll show you how to use the ball joint pickle fork here in a minute. Okay, so I went to Advanced Auto to get this part, this tool. They rent them, and sometimes it's worth buying, but they rent them for you, put down a deposit, and then they turn it. If you turn it back in, you get your deposit back, and it's actually no cost. So this is a pickle fork, or I open this upside down, a ball joint puller. And they have tie rod pullers in here, and they have pitman arm pullers. And I'm just going to grab the ball joint. It's a 15/16 little fork here, and you assemble it together. And that's going to go in between the control arm and the ball joint. We're going to pack it in there with a hammer. There's this little boot. You guys can see the boot on here. That is part of the factory boot, and that's not necessary. The new arm is going to have a nice sleeve on that. If you could preserve it, you can. If not, we will get that torn out of there. But ready to go. I'm going to smack it a few times with a hammer. Just kind of loosen it up. Let it know who's boss. I did put the bolt back in up here just to support. I didn't secure it, but I'm just smacking it around just a little bit. how do you do, and we'll get the pickle fork. It's inserted in there. It's going to take a little bit of how do you do in order to get in there, but pop it right underneath there. That boot's in the way, and so is the protector for the rotor. But what's going to happen is once the ball joint lets free, the rotor and the brake caliper and everything is potentially going to fall forward. So just be prepared for that. Sometimes have a hand there while you're pounding or whatever. But yeah, that's where we're at.
Okay.
All right, couple smacks more and we're good to go. The ball joint's free here. Like I said, the rotors and everything are free to come forward. So I actually was able to preserve this little boot, and we'll use that when we put the other arm back on. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull the bolts out of the top here. And the bolt head was actually always facing towards the back, and the nut went on towards the front of the vehicle. I'll put that in my, even though this looks backwards here. There's this little spacer that's in there that you don't want to lose when you pull those off, so be very careful to preserve that little spacer on that. And there we are. That's the ball joint and control arm. The ball joint moves pretty freely. You can tell that, you can see in here this is torn, and yeah, it's pretty loose. My other side was actually worse, so go ahead and pause. Alright, got the new guy back on there. A couple things. You want to make sure there is a difference between the passenger and the driver's side. It actually says R on here for the right side if you're facing towards the front. And on the very top of it, it has a little nipple here. And that's just so you can get the ABS sensor clipped on. My ABS sensor clip is actually broken, so once we put it on there, I'm just going to electric tape it on. And you remember how much play there was in the old ball joint here. Put them side by side, just make sure that they line up as far as size. Same thing. But you see the play in this one and the brand new one is pretty solid. I don't think I can even move it at this point. They're just going to take off the brand new nut that comes with this. And there's a cotter pin too, because these guys have a little, you can see the hole maybe a little bit better on this one here to go in for the cotter pin once you put the nut on the bolt there. So the ball joint is going to set that down in through the hole here and slide this guy all the way back up in there. We'll get the bolts in and go from there. Oh, I want to move that back out because I got it's got to go on top. Alright, I got the bolts back through and the nuts on. All I'm just going to do is tighten them up. I'm not tightening them all the way down to final torque right now, but we're just going to get them in there so that they're somewhat gripping. It's going to compress this right here just enough so that it comes down into the bushings that are on the control arm. So we'll get that tightened up and go from there. Okay, so underneath here is where the ball joint bolt comes out through the support arm here. So we're going to have to get the nut started on that bolt, but if you can tell, it's not enough upward pressure, so we're going to have to jack the whole truck up suspension so that it lifts up just a little bit more so that there's a little bit of space to do this. So we're going to jack the truck up. Alright, we got the truck jacked just a little bit here, and we're just going to finger tighten, starting this nut on the bolt on the bottom of the ball joint. We got a ways to go to get this guy tightened up, but good. Alright, now I'm switching back to the 7/8 socket, and we'll get that tightened in. Alright, just we're tightening up the nut on the bottom part of the ball joint. We're just going to go until we're going to have to see the hole there for the cotter pin that's got to go through the bottom of the ball joint. But this is going to take a little bit. There's kind of a confined space here to get it in.
Stabilizer there for the